Fäkris is a group of anti-cult organizations that tries to fight against new religious movements in particular. The initiative was mainly taken by former members of such religious organizations. And they try to spread some sort of public panic about those new religious movements, and they were quite successful in the 1990s and also, I would say, the first decade of this century, because of the dramatic events that took place in a number of countries like France, Switzerland, Canada, United States, and so on. And so they were really quoted by the media, and in various countries, including in Belgium, Western Europe. And of course, as they could sell some sort of horrific stories, some dramatic experiences that some had in those new religious movements, they were heard quite largely in the last decade of the last century and the first decade of this century. And this was also an incentive, in a sense, for governments to put in place a number of, let's say, cult observatories or sect observatories, like the Mills in France, followed by the Miviludes in Belgium, the CIA, ONS, also in Germany and in Austria. It's mainly in those four countries that they were rather successful with their campaigns, as they were followed by the government. Two French-speaking countries, very close, I would say, culturally and ideologically to each other, like Belgium and France, and the same with two German-speaking countries, Austria and Germany.
So, are there any organizations that opposite Fäkris in the world?
Yes, a number of human rights organizations, but not that many, are really fighting the propaganda, the lies that are spread around by Fäkris. Ours is one of them, but there are some others, also some individuals, lawyers, are fighting against Fäkris because it damages the image of some religious movements that are abiding by the law in the countries where they exist. I think of Jehovah's Witnesses, for example, and other movements that are totally peaceful and respecting the rule of law. So the way we fight against Fäkris is by denouncing the lies that they spread around, but also by defending a number of movements that are falsely accused of all sorts of illegal or sometimes criminal activities, and these are again lies. So we wrote a number of brochures in the past about some movements like the Sahaja Yoga, about Jehovah's Witnesses, about the Raelians, the Unification Church, the Soka Gakkai, and so on. Just from a purely human rights point of view and from a legal point of view, and analyzing what were their teachings, if they had been condemned or not by courts in their own countries, and quite often those accusations were spread around by Fäkris were absolutely groundless. But you know, the stories are interesting for journalists, and for about 20 years unfortunately they have been successful. But now there are other events coming to the surface and that are much more interesting for journalists and the media. It's jihadism, radicalization, the alleged threat posed by Islam, and so on. And so they are now, I would say, rather neglected. They have not changed their discourse. They are almost unheard wherever they try to get their message through. For example, at the OSCE, every year there is an annual meeting in Warsaw in September, October. I've been in Warsaw every year in the last 20 years, I must say, making statements to defend a number of religious groups, minority or not. And in the last few years, we have seen Fäkris that suddenly appeared on the scene in Warsaw, denouncing globally with inaccurate accusations and data, the cause, the danger that they represent to security, to the family, to the country, and so on. And I must say that they have never been successful with that sort of message. And everybody has realized that they were absolutely groundless, those accusations. And Fautre was there. Fautre was there several years ago. It was the first time I was in physical contact with him. That guy looked absolutely crazy. He was running around in the room where there was that high-level meeting, taking pictures of those who were criticizing a number of countries like Russia, for example, but also defending some religious minorities. And I had a document at that time in which I was accusing him, and I didn't know before that conference that he would be present. And I put that on the table, I displayed my documents on the table as many other human rights organizations, and somebody saw him taking all my papers and putting them in the paper basket. And then I had a second physical contact with him. Indirectly, I would say, when in Brussels, a few years ago, I organized a conference at the European Parliament about the misuse of the law on extremism in Russia. And quite by chance, he was in Brussels at that time. He registered to attend the conference, and I knowing that the guy, that he would make a lot of trouble. And so I had the power at that time to prevent him from getting to the parliament. He was absolutely furious. There was a complaint that was lodged by the Russian embassy in Brussels that one of their prominent citizens had been denied the access to the European Parliament because of me. It made headlines in the Interfax agency in Russia, and so on. You might still find it if it's not deleted. And so my meetings with him, I would say, have always been conflictual.